For some time I have lamented the fact that the art of telling a good story or even joke seems to be lost, which is why I jumped at the opportunity this week to spend time with author, speaker, storyteller and artist Paul Carter and enjoy a smorgasbord of truly amazing and captivating stories. Told with great poise, irreverence and certainly no political correctness, these stories include the true nature of life on oil rigs and big oil before health and safety, the brutal reality of desk jobs, becoming an acclaimed author with dyslexia, riding around Australia on the world's first bike that runs on cooking oil, the baby joke that will get you into trouble, sharing a smoke with primates and nearly dying on a National Geographic shoot, as well as many, many more. However, this isn't just one amazing story after another. Contained within this conversation, there are some really solid truths, values, and a firmness, particularly about the true nature of manhood, that I personally find missing currently in everyday conversation. This podcast isn't for everybody, but I truly valued and enjoyed my time with Paul unapologetically. Now, I don't normally tell people how to listen to podcasts, but this is quite a long one. You may want to sit down and just listen to the whole thing, but I would suggest, if you haven't got the time, just listen to one story after another, and I promise you, if you enjoy it, you're going to have a great time. So enjoy Paul. Hello and welcome back to WA Real. I'm your host, Bryn Edwards, working on oil rigs, writing books, riding around Australia on a bike that runs on cooking oil. Strap in for today's episode with author, speaker, storyteller and artist Paul Carter. Paul, welcome to the show.
Hello, Bryn. I've never met a Bryn before.
You've not?
We had a cat when I was a boy. It wasn't my cat, it was my dad's cat.
Yeah.
And he was called Bryn.
Oh, right.
He was a really awful, well, no, he was beautiful, but he was a street cat.
Right.
Dad took him in, and he was just a big, manly ginger Tom. He'd been in a million fights. Both ears had been split, and you know how they roll up?
Yes.
They'd rolled up into his head,
yeah.
So he looked like this cat with no ears, scars. I think he'd had a stroke.
All right.
And he and I became very close. We would hide from Dad.
Did Dad give him the name, Bryn?
Bryn, yeah. Dad had a lot of Welsh mates.
Yeah.
He was in the military.
Right.
And he named the cat Bryn. And very happy childhood memories of hiding from my father with Bryn. Because Dad was a bash now, questions later military man.
Yes.
Product of 1950s.
Right.
So he would often walk around the house, and I would move Bryn's. He was an overt snob, the cat that would only drink milk if I pre-popped any bubbles on the surface.
All right.
Of his saucer. So I would move the saucer,
and
then
the sound of this, Bryn.
Bryn's cool, yeah, and then Dad would sort of march around the house and catch the edge of the saucer with his heel, and milk would shoot up his trouser leg, and then the beatings would commence. So Bryn and I would hide.
Indeed.
From Dad.
Indeed. Oh, that's...
But apart from that, it was great.
That was great. Awesome. So there's your Bryn story. So you came... One of the first things I like to do with all the guests is understand how they ended up in Western Australia, whether they're born here or moved here. So I understand you came here when you were 15?
Yes.
With your mum?
Yes.
Why was that?
My parents separated when I was 7.
Right.
And it was one of those separations where the father was... their marriage was she lived in fear. And he was a scary guy.
Yeah.
A really scary guy.
Yeah.
He was the dad that would make you go in the garden and find a stick that he's going to beat you with.
Right.
And you would come back and he'd send you away, and you'd end up sort of dragging half a tree in through the back door, and by then you're so terrified. So it wasn't so much a physical thing, it was mental. And then, one day Mum got the strength to run. So it was that crazy bailing up the kids at 2 a.m. in their doona.
Right.
And I remember it. And she woke me with her index finger across her lips and picked me up in my doona and stuck me in the car. And she ran.
Yeah.
And we moved into a council flat in Aberdeen. And Mum was working in a motel near the airport. And the 40s field was booming at the time. It was just kicking off in Aberdeen. The offshore oil exploration that changed Aberdeen from, a quiet sort of fishing town into the biggest hub for oil and gas activity in Europe.
Yeah.
Biggest heliport in Europe. And an American gentleman had come over, and he was setting up a machine shop and supplying directional drilling tools to offshore rigs. And he checked into that motel because it was very close to where Tri-State had set up their workshop. And my mother is German, and she obviously speaks and writes German. And at the same time that Tri-State were doing that, they were setting up another machine shop and office in Celle in Germany. And just from checking the guy in a couple of times on his first 2 trips, he realised that Mum had good communication skills and she was fluent in German as well as English. And he said, "Look, I need someone as a secretary, at the time, 1977." And he said, "Do you want a job?" And Mum said, well, what's it pay? And it was 3 times what she was making raising 2 kids on her own, Yeah. And she took the job, and he turned out to be an incredibly generous, decent man who looked after his people. And Mum was about a year working for. His name was Jack Jackson,
right?
Jesse Thomas Jackson. I'll never forget him. He was awesome, and he knew that Mum was a single mum, and I would regularly skive off school, and I would misbehave very badly. And Jack, in a way, took me under his wing a little bit, and he got me. He put me to work in the workshop, labouring and washing vehicles and sweeping up swarf from around the lathes and washing down drilling tools when they came in as a little kid. But he would give me money. He'd stand there with his hand in his pocket, jiggling the change, and I'd do that job, and he'd say, "You want to wash my car, Paul?" He was from Louisiana. Sorry, Jack. He was born in Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas. He had that lovely drawl about him, that southern drawl. He was just a lovely man, and he'd give me £10. Yeah, that was a lot of money in those days. And so I worked my ass off, and loved that he was interacting with me, and then I started hanging out with the guys on crew change in the change rooms. I'd run down there on a Saturday, and in those days they were all big burly men. A lot of them were Americans, full sleeve tats. A lot of them ex-military. Yeah. A lot of them ex-cons. Yeah. And they'd slip buck knives in my pocket and playing cards with naked ladies on the back and roughhouse me around in the workshop. And it was, I loved it.
I bet. And real sense of belonging in there.
Exactly. It was great. And I wanted to be like them.
Right.
And then Jack said, we're setting up a machine shop in Perth, Western Australia. And I'm going over there to set that up. The company will pay, Do you want to go? And Mum leapt on the opportunity and said, absolutely. My sister is 5 years older than me, so she'd already moved. She left home early. She'd met a young man and got off and got married at 19. And so Mum and I arrived in Perth, August 1985. Cool. And she started working, and that was me.
Never had the urge to go back to Aberdeen?
No. In the first 24 hours, I went to Cottesloe Beach. I'd never seen a woman in bathers before.
Right.
I mean, you had to drag my ass off the beach, Yeah, because how old was I when we got here? 15, so you're not going to go to the beach in Aberdeen. No. The North Sea,
No.
So it was heaven. People had 2 cars and lived in a house with a garden and had a pool. Every other kid had a pool in the backyard. It was like Disney World, So very grateful that we ended up here. Yeah. So he changed.
This is firmly home now.
Oh yeah. Jack Jackson changed the family's trajectory forever by hiring my mother.
Right. So, look, we'll dive into you working on rigs and writing books and stuff in a minute, but there's a strong sense of storytelling in what you do. Where does that come from?
My father.
Right. Why is that? Is he a storyteller?
A massive storyteller. Yeah. He and his mother. Yeah, they're all from South London.
Right.
And
spin a yarn.
It can spin a yarn. Yeah, Dad was always. He was a yeah. It's funny. When he died, people would at his funeral, people would come barreling up to me and say, "Oh, life and soul of the party." Always making me laugh, always telling a funny story. So there were two sides to him. I didn't get to see much of the funny storytelling, lovable, character. I saw more of the, the one, the other one.
The other one.
Yeah, the ugly one. But he did soften later in life.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there was a large chunk of time there where I just didn't see him, had no contact with him.
Yeah.
It was just me and Mum,
Did you go and initiate, go and find again?
I did. Yeah, I did. I'd already started working on the rigs. I was 19 and I just rang him up. And he answered the phone and I said, I'm in Changi, Singapore. I used to get off the rig in those days and we'd always crew change through Singapore because that was our main hub for Southeast Asian operations.
Yep.
So a bachelor, no fixed address. I'd get off the rig. I'd end up in Singapore and I'd just stand in the airport at the big board before it was electronic and we'd go and all the fucking flights or what was happening, and I'd literally just stand there. And in those days we got paid in cash, greenbacks. So I've done 6 weeks, sometimes 2 months offshore, and I'm straight to the office, get paid, straight back to Changi, or sometimes I'd stop in this bar called the Handlebar and get drunk with the crew, which was fun. That was when Singapore was fun. Yeah. And it was a bar you ride your motorcycle into. It was just off Orchard Road on this massive quarter-acre block. It doesn't exist anymore. But you had to ride through this jungly sort of front yard into this bar and ride your bike through it, park it out the back, and then the bar was oval shaped and the stools had 50cc engines in them. And you paid a $50 deposit and there was a set of handlebars that would clip into the stool and you'd start it. And the idea at the handlebar was you'd race around and they put your beer on the bar and you go around the bar and you had to grab your beer, drink and then put it down again, then do a lap and then pick it up again and without spilling or crashing or.
Yeah.
So we'd usually do a session at the handlebar and then I'd go back to the airport pissed and stare at the big board and I'd just choose randomly. I'm going to go to Cancun and get my teeth cleaned, or I'm going to go to Guatemala, and I'd just buck off and blow my entire paycheck. I had a house brick of greenbacks in my pocket, which I burned through very quickly and end up back on the rig with nothing but some filthy Polaroids and a story to tell. And I kept that up for way, way too long.
Yeah.
And it was one of those crew changes where I just had this, I thought I was a man. I was ready to confront my father and say,
right,
I'm a man now, and I'm working on the rigs, and I can handle myself, and that didn't work out quite that way. I rang him up and said, I'm jumping on this plane to London. I'll be there in 13 hours or whatever. And I saw him, and that was a bit weird because there were a lot of things about him that were just like me. But if you haven't spent time with your father and then suddenly you do as a man, it was a wee bit disconcerting because a lot of those idiosyncrasies and habits, and for example, the whiskey that he drinks is the whiskey that I drink. And there's a lot of whiskeys that you can choose from.
Yes.
But his go-to is Macallan 18, and that was also mine. And just little weird things like that. After he died, I missed him so much. It was no facilitatory thing. So I actually tried to I mixed equal parts WD-40, Old Spice, Cordite, and single malt whiskey in an egg cup and whizzed it round with my finger, and then sat in my shed sniffing my finger. And I was, that's Dad. Yeah, that's Dad. Because I'll close my eyes and you get a much better trigger.
Yeah. If
you close your eyes and smell. And so I would try and conjure up my father by the alchemy of mixing shit in an egg cup.
Indeed.
But it worked. Because when I was a kid, I used to put he was an Air Force pilot, and I used to put his helmet on. It's there, sitting up there. I used to put his helmet on, and obviously he's got his bone dome on. He's in a cockpit all day long. He's sweating in it.
Yeah.
And
a distinct smell.
That smell is very much imprinted because I all I ever wanted to do was wear his gear, so I put it on.
Yeah.
I'd put his helmet on and run around and getting told off, and so I don't know why I'm telling you that. Yeah.
There you go. So you started on the rigs quite early? Was it 16?
16, yeah.
What was that like?
Really, really, really terrifying.
Yeah.
I was misbehaving a lot, and I wasn't doing well at school. I'm very dyslexic, so I was pegged in the British system as being well below standard and would have been held back. And then I arrived in Australia, and the system was a little bit better, but not that much. Yeah. So I wasn't doing well at all at school with numbers, with writing, and started to rebel a little bit, lacking the father figure direction. And so Mum decided the best way to go was I either join the army and get some discipline, or it was Jack said, stick him on the rigs. Yeah. It'll make him or break him. And so I went to work. And I was lucky. I fell into a crew of older guys who were patient, and particularly Irwin Hertzeg. Yeah. He remained my boss for the next 22 years. And yeah, he's 15 years older than me. And I was very lucky. Owen took me under his wing, and I learned from a guy who is the best man I've ever met in every respect. Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
He's how can I describe it? Owen is he's got a fearsome reputation, and he's a big guy, and he's extremely good at his job. So he's well respected in the industry. It's a hard nut to crack in oil and gas, because he's the guy that you can, if you're in a fight, Irwin's right behind you. You know, you've got to kill him to stop him. Yeah. But he's incredibly gentle and charming. Right. You know, he's the guy that'll charm your pants off while he's throttling you to death with a telephone cord, and you'll let him because he's so nice. Right. He's that guy. Right. Yeah. And he's just an incredibly good father. He's got 4 children, and just did such a good job balancing that ever so difficult crew change. Yeah. And his wife is equally brilliant. So they made it work. They are the only couple I've ever met in the oil and gas industry, hands down, that actually love each other and made it properly work. Yeah. He never ever strayed, ever. Yeah. And believe me, I would know. He never ever put a foot wrong. He never lied to her, never messed around, never ever. He'd always just stayed.
Bottle that up.
Just the guy, you know. Yeah. He really is astonishing. Yeah. Just 100%. Yeah, you trust him with my life, trust him with my kids' lives. I was very lucky to meet him, because every other guy I met was you know, typical oil field.
Which means
anything goes. You know, anything goes. What happens in Vegas, you know, the proper nutters, you know, oh God. But Irwin was always, and as a result of that, the guys on his crew were equally together and organised, and so I was the youngest and the most wayward. And I had to be disciplined a few times in his fashion, and that straightened me out. I would be dead. Happily say that. I definitely would not be here if he hadn't intervened a couple of times. Yeah. We were working in Colombia, and I was going off the rails. Coke, hookers, just... And this is... Escobar was still alive, anything goes. I was all caught up in it as a 24-year-old. And then suddenly I find myself forcibly transferred to Brunei for 3 years, which is the oil and gas equivalent of the Betty Ford Clinic.
Yeah.
So you will go to Brunei. Oh, yeah, there's no legal addictive stimulants or otherwise available in Brunei. There's no one to fight. There's nothing to take or do. So you either make it or you don't, right? So after that 3 years in the jungle, clean and sober and fitter than I've ever been in my life. Yeah. And absolutely screwed the nut and found my balance as a 28-year-old and then transitioned back into the Western world. Yeah. And it was great because I had a completely different outlook on everything. And never touched drugs again. Rarely drink. But it was that process. And he didn't just send me there. He came with me. He wasn't there the whole 3 years, but he was in and out. Yeah. Every 2-3 months he'd turn up and stay for a couple of months. And he was constantly checking on me, constantly checking, making sure, looking at all the jobs I was doing offshore, looking at everything that I was doing, and would have comms regularly with my mum. I was shocking communicating with my family. Yeah. And he really did put the effort and the time in. And
that's a real gift, isn't it?
Yeah. Ultimately, to replace him, I replaced him when he left. Because nobody really keeps that level of work up into their 50s. It's just too physically demanding. Yeah. So I replaced him when he transitioned out, but didn't find someone to pass my knowledge onto like he did with me. Right. That never happened because the industry morphed and changed into this new fly-by-wire cyber chair thing that. Oil and gas it's unbelievable. The amount of money and tech that gets poured into it. It's like the space race in the 60s. Yeah. So at the drill floor that I cut my teeth on, is laughed upon in oil and gas today. Yeah. In that short time frame, you think about it, it's astonishing. We've gone from 8 guys on the floor, permanently damaging their thoracic spine and literally cutting things off their body. Yeah. to 2 dudes in the in a perspex bubble with a heads-up display, just pressing buttons. Yeah. Is that a good thing or? I think it's great because it has to move forward. Yeah. So the amount of lives and injuries that have been avoided through tech, the data is really impressive, but it also creates other headaches in terms of the mechanics of drilling a hole in the ground. Yeah. A lot of the time, I'll sit there in these meetings thinking, Jesus, if we just did that with a conventional rig, we'd actually be done by now. Right. Okay, we might have killed a guy, but
You might have lost a leg.
No, it's good. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's the challenge now is water depth. That's the thing now. Back then it wasn't. It was just about how quickly can you drill a hole in the ground and get the hydrocarbons out. Now it's much more complex because we've tapped into everything that's easy to get to. Yes. And we've gone past that, and now we're going through the decades of now we have to have another major land war in the Middle East. So we're running out of wars to have over oil. Yeah. Now we're sort of forced to push the boundaries of deep water exploration and extended reach drilling. Because it's a water planet. Yeah. And 60% of it is water that's over a mile deep, and we have no idea what's down there. No. Billions of barrels of hydrocarbons. It's just accessing them, which is redundant anyway, because we don't find a viable alternative that's sustainable at the Bowser within the next century. We're going to fuck the planet forever. And yes. I have no doubt about that. So it's all a bit academic, really.
Tell me about how you got into writing. I understand. Does it have something to do with an appeal letter for a failed
Yes.
test?
Yeah. The BP Sakhalin V was the campaign.
Yeah. Is it in Russia?
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think about how to paint the picture. Traditionally, your big evil oil multinational makes a deal with the government of the country that they want to exploit. So they'll say, we want to drill. I'll give you a good example is Colombia, right? So the oil and gas entity says, we've done some seismic work with aeroplanes and we've flown about all over the jungle and we think there's oil here. And they'll point to the grid reference in the middle of nowhere. And they'll say, we want to drill 8 wells in that concession. That's 5 square miles of dense tropical rainforest. And the government says, yeah, right, give us 50 million in unmarked bills. Everybody gets paid off. And
I was happy.
And so then they come in and drop high explosives on the jungle and vaporize it. They're not moving the trees or planting one for every one that they pull. They just fucking blow it up, right?
Yeah.
We used to call it instant autumn. It's all done with helicopters. Instant autumn, because there's shockwave that reverberates around from where the ordnance detonated. All the trees and fluffy animals fall off, and erect the rig, and commence with drilling. And the government gets a little taste, and the rest is moved back to, for example, America via the Cancun-Le Mans pipeline. And in the early 90s, that was pumping 500,000 barrels a day into the American machine. And they will protect the flow at any cost.
Yes.
That's one of the first things I learned. It's called security of supply. No one fucks with the oil. No one.
Yes.
And they'll protect it. You'd be staggered at how far they'll go. It's astonishing. Security of supply is everything.
Yeah.
For example, recent history, America really pushed the envelope in terms of wanting to get away from the importing of hydrocarbons from the Middle East and from South America. And so with stimulation technologies and fracking, they were able to go back into millions of wells that had been drilled prior to the turn of the last century in America and get those wells back online.
Yeah.
Because essentially they just pumped a cement plug in them because they'd stopped flowing under their own volition.
Yeah.
And they were able to go back into those wells, frack, stimulate, pump, and they all came back online. So in this tiny 5-year window, America went from importing over 90% of its hydrocarbons to being completely self-sustainable. That's unheard of. That's astonishing. And the knee-jerk reaction globally to that was panic. The Middle East, for example, that's all they do. That's their income, is supply America with hydrocarbons, and suddenly the tap gets turned off. Oh, we don't need it anymore. We've got our own oil. And that was what kicked off the worst oil and gas recession since the end of World War II in October.
Years ago.
Yeah, October 2015.
Yeah.
Price of oil just went to nothing. And Australia's oil and gas business was collateral damage to that, because once it got below $50 a barrel, it's not economically viable to keep drilling.
Yeah.
It's costing too much. So the impetus was to flood the market with cheap oil to destabilize the price. And that's what they did. But you can't sustain that indefinitely.
Yeah.
There isn't that much in reserve to keep doing it. But they did it, and it worked very well. And it dropped a bomb on oil and gas. Everybody lost their job.
Yeah, me included.
You included. I held on by the skin of my teeth. Everybody I come into contact with now is a 28-year-old graduate drilling engineer. It's the brave new oil and gas. The old school guys are thin on the ground now. So that's a bit disconcerting, because a lot of the public speaking gigs that I get related to the books, I find myself at these dinners giving a keynote or doing an awards night to 1,000, 2,000 oil and gas people. For example, the OTC in Houston, everybody's young, and it's all the new technology that's coming in. It makes me feel so old.
Yeah.
We've
brought that fossil in.
Yeah. Oh, that guy. My books are required reading for drilling engineering students. So a lot of the people I'm coming into contact with now read my books while they were studying.
Yes.
And the rigs and the drill floor and the stuff I'm talking about in book 1 doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It just doesn't exist anymore. It's like watching an old cowboy film, Yeah. It just puts you in this really weird space, because I'm not that old.
No.
I've only just cracked 50, but I might as well be 150 in their eyes, because the old drill floor is, you used to throw chain.
Yeah.
Throwing chain on a piece of drill pipe to make it up. Wow. That's just mad. That's like talking about sending a carrier pigeon to someone that's got their head planted in their Twitter account or whatever, Anyway.
I'll ask you about...
what was the question?
How did you end up...
Russia.
Writing?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Was I talking about Russia? Yeah, so...
and a letter.
The Sakhalin V campaign was just after 9/11.
Yeah.
Another cataclysmic event that changed the world forever. And oil and gas's knee-jerk reaction to that was, well, fuck, a drilling rig in the middle of the ocean is essentially a bomb with no detonator. What the fuck are we going to do? Because there's a significant dollar value attached to that asset, aside from the 150 plus souls on board. How do we protect that asset? And prior to that happening, Somalia was becoming a real problem.
Yeah.
And the international maritime community, including the insurance brokers, just couldn't control it. Piracy was getting out of control. There was a gun-related fatality just in the Straits of Malacca on average 4 times a week.
Right.
People don't realize open water is really dangerous.
Yeah.
Aside from Mother Nature, there are all kinds of bad people out there. And everybody turned their back on policing it and let oil and gas do it themselves. So we're talking wildly scary, tooled up PMCs, private military contractors, and it was security of supply. I'll say it again, security of supply.
Yeah.
And so that was already being allowed to happen. And then 9/11 happened, and the impetus was put back on the operator to do much more thorough vetting of foreign nationals that come into your country to extract your hydrocarbons. Right. And the Russians took that very seriously.
Yeah.
So the medical vetting for the crews that were going to go and do Sakhalin V was like nothing I'd ever seen before, because the sea of Kursk freezes up. So they had a window of 3 months to drill that well. So tow the rig up from Singapore, spud the well, drill the well, complete the well, and get out before the rig is trapped in the ice and can't leave.
Yeah.
So they wanted everybody on that rig. You're not doing a month-and-month crew change or whatever. You are there till the well is drilled. So from a psychological point of view, you need to prepare yourself to go out and live in Tupperware on this atoll in a really rough part of the world where it's minus 50 with wind chill, and be prepared to stay there for 3 months. And often the crew change wouldn't happen because the M8 choppers the Russians were doing the crew changes with fly by line of sight. There was no electronic medium there. So if they can't see the heli deck, then, you're not getting a crew change.
Yeah.
And also it was quite far offshore. So they're turning the chopper into a flying gas can, and they reach their PNR, their point of no return. They've expired half their fuel. Yes. They're committed to landing on that rig.
Yes.
So if that heli deck is heaving on all axes, you can imagine how hard it is to put a helicopter down on the big H if it's moving.
Yes.
So some of the crew changes were just horrible.
Yeah.
I'm not a great person to be in an aircraft, which is dumb because my dad was a fighter pilot, but I'm not a comfortable flyer.
Yeah.
And I've had that many chopper flights where I'm never doing this again. Fuck, I'm never going back in a helicopter ever again. I've gotten off and kissed the ground. Literally. So the vetting process for Sakhalin V was a psychometric evaluation involving interviews with psychiatrists and psychologists and all manner of testing. And I failed.
Right.
really badly.
Right.
And I'd come off a crew change out of Vung Tau in Vietnam. I was on a Santa Fe rig, and my back-to-back hadn't turned up, so I'd done 72 hours on the drill floor, continually working.
Yeah.
And in terms of today's QHSE policies and safety, that's what? So the medic was giving me drugs to keep me awake so I could keep doing my job, and then caught my chopper to town and then flew commercial airliners to Singapore, got off the plane in Singapore, and my boss is waiting for me saying, "I'm sorry, pal, this was booked months in advance. You've got to go from here to Changi Medical Center and start your medical evaluation for Sakhalin V." And I was so strung out, shaking, if you don't sleep for extended, it's a form of torture.
Yeah.
You know, once you crack 48 hours, you are fiddling with your sanity.
Yes.
And I was approaching 80 hours, and I find myself sitting in front of this Australian psychiatrist who looked like a cross between a King Charles Spaniel and a hippie. And he's waxing lyrical, asking me questions. What's your relationship like with your father? Anyway, that ended really badly. And I'm back in the hotel, and Drew rang me, my boss's boss, and he's an ex-Marine Corps lieutenant. And Drew was like, "Paulie, don't fuck this up. We need to win this tender. You're the crew chief. I need you to write a letter of apology to that man and ask for another appointment to start the process again, because you just failed so badly, you know."
Yeah.
And that turned into this 5,000-word rant on what's wrong with oil and gas to put a guy like me in a position like that in the first fucking place. And I wrote down exactly how I was feeling and went back the next day and gave him the letter. I wrote it in the hotel room, drank the minibar on the hotel stationery with a biro, and waited in the waiting room. And I heard him laughing inside his office, and he came out and he said, "That is the funniest document I've ever read in my life.
Yeah.
Yes, we shall reevaluate you. Go back to your hotel and go to bed," and which I did.
Yeah.
And we started the process, and I passed. And about a year later, I managed to get a hold of my own medical jacket, my workup. And it's a horrible document to read, Bryn.
Yeah.
You know, you've got two people dissecting your brain, and it's a brutally straight up and down, pigeonholed, boom, 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 your strengths, your weaknesses, all of those things, clearly identified.
Yeah.
All the blood work that they did, you know, everything about you as a physical being and an entity.
Yeah.
Totally dissected in this medical document.
Wow.
And I got a hold of it, which took some doing because I wanted to read it. And then I had a copy of the letter I'd written at the beginning of the process. This is 12 months later. I got my file, and I sent the whole thing to a best mate of mine in Sydney who knows me really well.
Yeah.
And he showed it to his wife. And then Sally went ahead and sent my letter to a friend of hers that works in publishing.
Yeah.
And I'd come back from another crew change in Russia of 3 months. And there's a message on my answering machine. "Hi, Paul. You don't know me. My name's Sue Hines. I'm the trade publishing director at Allen & Unwin. Anyway, I just read your psych evaluation. I'd like to have a meeting about writing a book." So I rang her up and I said, "What? You know, what?"
Yeah.
And I said to her, "I'm a high school failure. I didn't finish high school and I'm dyslexic. Doesn't matter. Can we have a meeting?" Okay. So we met and she said, "Just go away and write your story down." That's how it happened.
Yeah.
So I did that. And then they
That must have been
published
quite a bit of a...
Don't Tell Mum.
Fuck, this is weird.
Yeah, it was. So I just wrote the way I would tell the story.
Yeah.
If we were sitting in a pub.
Yeah.
That's the narrative of the book.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to win a Booker for literature.
No.
You know, it's just
I actually read it when I first started at Chevron.
Ah.
Yeah. And yeah, it's cool. Don't tell your mum I work on the rigs. She thinks I'm a piano player in a whorehouse. Where did that title come from?
It's an oil and gas expression.
Right.
It goes back to the early days of oil and gas, right back to the early days of you know the before the war.
Right.
1930s oil and gas. It was just frowned upon because only, chain gangs, forced labor, most of the guys working in oil and gas in its early days were criminals, cons, hard nuts, people that society frowned upon. So don't tell mum I work on it. It's much more civilized to be playing a piano in a whorehouse than working on the drill floor. And that always made me laugh.
Yeah.
And I heard that from Jack Jackson.
Yeah.
Way back in the day when I was a kid. And when I was thinking of a title, I thought, there you go, that's the title.
So how did the book do?
Yeah, great. Well, I think I'm up to 2.8 million copies now sold.
Far out.
Yeah.
And then where did it go from there then?
Well, then, obviously, Allen and Unwin, the publishing house, had sold the rights to American publishers, European publishers, foreign language. E-books started to happen. Audio books started to happen. And they said, you need to write another one. And so I did. I wrote This Is Not a Drill, which is the sort of last 4 years of my offshore career. When it was starting to change dramatically. The internet happened, and the adventure and the humor and the knowledge base and the stories stopped immediately.
Right.
The minute the internet,
depth and richness
everything just dissipated, like it was gone. I remember it. I have very, very clear memories of that.
Yeah.
The first Wi-Fi magic box on the roof in the radio room. Guys were already going offshore with their laptops, to watch films and to wait their turn for their 15 minutes to log on to Hotmail, and still making radio sat phone calls back home. You got 10 minutes a week with like a 20-second delay. It's impossible to have a conversation. Hi, love, how are you? Yeah. And then, just too hard, right?
Yeah.
And then one day there's this little box with lights and an aerial, and poof, everybody disappeared into their room.
Yes.
Finished their tower on the drill floor, 12 hours work, shower, food, on their bunk, curtain closed, on the internet. And that was it. Finished.
It's interesting you say that, actually, because I grew up in England, and the old boy used to be in the pub a fair bit, and him and his mates would meet up Friday night, and they would just share jokes that they've heard, right, from all the different places they've been to during the week.
Exactly. The art of storytelling.
Yeah, and I grew up listening to them, and they were my role models, and they were the people who, I listened to how they told jokes, how they told funny stories, how they did this, how they did that. And now, I can't remember the last time someone actually told me a good, funny joke.
I've got one for you.
Just one sec, and then I'll hear it. Now it's more, and you can't see this on the podcast, but now it's somebody pointing their phone towards their friend and going, have you seen this one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Yeah. And it's just, lost. That's why I was really keen to come and talk to you today, because, storytelling is almost, you get this stuff like, come and learn how to do storytelling. It's like, fuck it, I grew up listening to people telling stories. Fucking funny ones.
Yeah.
Go on, tell me a joke.
Oh, that's my favourite joke.
Go on.
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of your listeners would have heard it. But it's just so nice. Okay. Nice guy, hard worker, good husband, good father, just a good all-round chap, knocks his pan out, runs his own business, and he's successful, and everything's great. Then he starts to hemorrhage money. He's just bleeding cash flow. Doesn't talk to his wife about it. And he borrows against the debt, trying to consolidate. And he's still hemorrhaging, it's not working. He starts drinking. Can't stop. And he's hitting it hard, and his wife Irene notices the change, and she says, listen, horse, fucking screw the nut, or I'm going to leave your drunk ass. Okay. So he goes down to the pub, of course, and gets blind drunk with his mate. And it's closing time, and he's standing out the front, pissed out of his mind, and throws up all over himself. And his mate Dave says, Jesus, fuck, John, fuck, man, you go home like that, she's going to leave you. He goes, help me. He says, well, what do you want me to do? He says, give me your shirt. He said, I'm not giving you my shirt. But here you go. He sticks $20 in his top pocket. He says, when you get home, you tell Irene that some young bloke threw up on you in the pub, gave you the money to get the shirt cleaned, and she might give you a break, at least buy yourself some time. He's like, thanks, buddy. Barrels through the front door. She clocks him, launches off the couch. That's it. You're a pissy ass waste of groceries. I'm fucking. He goes, whoa, baby, no. The young guy threw up on me. Look, he gave me $20 to pay for the dry cleaning, and she said, is that right? Well, why do you have two $20 bills sticking out your pocket? He said, oh, well, the other one's from the guy that shat in my pants.
I've heard that. I love it. Love it.
Yeah, so that's. I remember watching that happen, and that was the end of the lunacy and the fun stuff. And we used to make our own fun, you know. I remember in Nigeria we got a generator had to be choppered out in this plywood packing, in this massive plywood packing. So the roughnecks, as soon as the roustabouts and roughnecks, the labourers on the rig, as soon as they'd finished work, they got hammer and nails and they made a half pipe. And then they chop it out, and the next, you know, they were making this thing, and then they they spoke to the guys in town. They sent skateboards out to the rig, and they're all young guys, and and they're catching big air on the heli deck. This fucking thing's on the Big H, and this one guy got that really high, the wind, he just sailed 150 feet into the South China Sea, tumbling. Oh, launch the fast rescue boat! Go and get it! And doing just lunacy like that, you know. We used to go diving. I used to bring my scuba gear out to the rig and we'd go dive the wellhead. It was crazy fun because of the heat and the vibration. All this marine life would be attracted to the sound. And the stuff you'd see down there was great. You know, obviously you're not going to do that now.
Yeah.
That would be way too dangerous. But we used to do it all the time.
So how did we go from working on rigs, write a second book, to designing and riding
bikes
based on cooking oil?
Claire, my wife, book 2 had come out and done all right, and then I was getting very disillusioned with the industry because I'd met Claire, who has thinks it. Claire is the knit your own muesli hippie earth mother, and I am, in her eyes, a poster boy for earth raping eco vandals. You know, oil and gas at any cost. You know, I might as well be throwing fucking kittens in a wood chipper for a job. What do? I throw kittens in a wood chipper. You know, that's how she saw me.
Yeah.
And didn't try to change me, but stuck to her guns about, God, your business is fucked up, you know, and was banging on about plastic in the ocean and sustainability and global warming and all that stuff 15 years ago and getting upset about it, right? So that's Claire.
Yeah.
And she had met my crew and was suitably disgusted by them. My brothers, she was, they're not normal people. You're not going to be normal. And we were in love, and I was 35, very much realizing I'm just going to be one of those oil and gas bachelors, you know?
Yeah.
And she said to me, if we're going to stay together, this is like a year into us dating. I guess you'd call it dating, because I'd disappear in the rig and come back, and you know. And we decided to move in together the first time I'd lived with someone, and we did that. And I got all kinds of awful marriage advice from my crew, because they'd all been through, they're all in their third marriage. Everyone apart from Irwin was into their third marriage, and so the marriage advice I was getting was atrocious. And I come from a bad broken home, so I'm very aware of the ugliness that goes on with separation and the trauma. Yeah. To everyone. It's like pulling the pin on a grenade. Fucking everybody gets hit with some of that shrapnel, you know, and so I was very cognizant of being properly scared of marriage.
Yes.
Because I don't want to repeat the sins of the father.
Yeah.
And I don't want history to be repeated in terms of oil and gas. Because the only person I'd ever met in my adult life who'd made it work was Irwin.
Yep.
And he's a fucking anomaly.
Yes.
Like, we're talking about an on the spectrum.
He's off there.
His IQ's over 150. The guy could have done fucking anything he wanted to. But he's also quite mental. So oil and gas was like the perfect balance for financial reward and academia being applied in the field. And there are guys with guns, and we can do whatever we want.
Yes.
That's
got the whole.
It's got the whole. Thing. Yeah. So, and she'd met them over that 12 months, bit by bit, one at a time. Someone would be coming through, whatever, and she was like, they're all fucking mad, and if we're going to get married and have kids, you need to do something else for a living because it ain't going to work. And I said, no, it'll work. She said, no, it won't.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. Okay. Mm. And I was madly in love with her, and I knew that I'd never meet anyone like that again. So I shook her hand and I said, okay, I'll. And I didn't like where the industry was going.
Yeah.
So I didn't think I could just stop working at 35 and live on royalty checks. But the book was doing really well, so there was hope there. But we were living in Sydney, and there is no oil and gas in Sydney at all.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I'll transition into some sort of desk role because I've got 20 over years of field experience. But we would have to move somewhere. And Claire was completely, I don't care, anywhere, name it. I'll go with you. I don't, wherever. So I was starting to think about that stuff. And I wanted to write another book, but I didn't have anything to write about because I'd made a promise to Claire that I would do something else. And we were now talking about getting engaged. So we got engaged and we planned our wedding, and it was between engagement and wedding. We went out to dinner and she said, can we make a baby? I want to be a mum. And I said, let's buy a dog. And if that works out, we'll get another dog. We'll buy another dog. And so I was terrified of that as well.
Yes.
But I said, okay, I'd love to be a dad. And she's very open. If there's something she wants to talk about, she will verbalize it straight away. There's no bottling it up and thinking about it and choosing a time.
Yeah.
It's on. Shit will get off the pot, right? And so I was, okay. So we commenced with making babies intercourse. And I thought, I don't know if my junk works. I've never tried this before. Yeah. I've never gotten anybody pregnant or tried to. I've always been incredibly careful in my life. You had to be in oil and gas.
Yeah.
So first attempt, bang, kapow. And I'm in Japan on a land rig up in Hokkaido in the middle of winter, and I'm on the drill floor and it's a blizzard, and the radio operator comes running up to the drill floor doing the pantomime of there's a phone call for you, and because I never went near the radio room because it's too frustrating, that means two things: someone's dead, or there's a problem, something's going on, right? So I run down, take the call. Claire's like, I'm pregnant, champ. This will be your last job then? And I hung the phone up and thought, fuck. Okay. Okay. What am I going to... Well, yeah, exactly. So I got back to Sydney and panicked. At 35, I lay in the bed, staring at the ceiling, peeling the onion till late at night. What the fuck am I going to do? How am I going to support my baby, my wife, living in this apartment in Rose Bay? The money was good back then. What am I going to do? I'm a 35-year-old dyslexic man with no other skill sets out of drilling holes in the ground and no education. Okay, I've written a couple of books that are doing okay, but what am I going to do? What am I going to do? It's all I've ever done. It's not like you can slot into some other job that's similar. What's similar?
There isn't.
Exactly. So I panicked. And total synchronicity. I took a phone call on that first rotation back while I was panicking. And it was a guy I hadn't seen in years and years and years from back in the day. It worked with my mother. And he had his own business here in Perth, supplying drilling equipment. And he needed someone to be the rental tool manager of all of that downhole directional and drill pipe assets that he rents to drilling contractors.
Yeah.
And I was just stood there on the balcony thinking, this isn't real. Really? And he's like, yeah, can I entice you away from the field? We'll pay for your flights. Okay. So I took the opportunity.
Yeah.
The universe was good enough to, wave that, hey, grab this thing. So I did.
Yeah.
And we arrived in Perth and I took the job. And Claire gave birth to Lola here in Perth. And directly after Lola was born, I found that process extremely difficult because I'd capitulated myself from my crew, my brothers, the guys I'd worked with,
for years,
fought with, brawled with, broken shit with.
Awesome.
Or, you get close, really close. And it didn't help that they would randomly call me up from the radio room and demand that I come back and stop all this pissy ass fucking around having babies and getting married and come back. Come back and
cheers, brother.
And I've got this desk job, my first desk job. Never worked in an office environment.
Yeah.
My direct report was a woman 10 years younger than me. I was so out of my comfort zone. I had to, I'm sat in this. Do you know Excel? What? No, computers up to that point in my life had been used for masturbating pretty much and sending the odd email. And I'm suddenly in this position where what's PowerPoint? What's X? No.
Yeah.
And I remember that first week, the guy who's on my left, he said to me, oh, we're going to load out those drilling jars and we're going to do that sub-assembly and we're all doing, are you doing that? And I just looked him in the eye and said, yeah, I'll take care of it. And he kind of gave me this blank, ambiguous smirk and went, okay, so I'm going to need you to send an email, just confirming that. And I said, well, I'm looking at you. And I said, I'll do it. Yeah. And he went, oh, Paul. It was like a mixture of pity and contempt. He was like, nah, mate, you need to cover your ass. And that was that. It was like a tsunami of realization. I sat there in this fucking cubicle in this office just going, oh no, my word means nothing
anymore.
How many emails am I going to send over the next 30 years just to cover someone's incompetence or make sure that I don't get blamed? Oh no, it was like I was just in this dark. I have no control over anything. I'm not in charge of anything. I'm reporting to this woman, old school misogynistic oil and gas kind of.
Whoa.
I'm reporting to a woman younger than me, and it's just a real head check of ego in oneself. And what have you been doing for the last 20 years? And I was depressed.
Oh, I bet.
And I'm going back to this uninsulated heat trap in Netherlands that we'd rented at the height of the mining boom. This is 2008 when we got here, and we're handing over $1,000 a week for this house. And Claire's just given birth to Lola, and I hated my job. And I remember that first week having those conversations and that realization. I'm driving a desk now. No more adventures, buddy. You're mowing the lawn on Sunday. You're doing the nappies. This is you now. Middle-age fucking bliss. This is you speed ramping into death and taxes. When I got married, the advice I got from Irwin was women need 3 things to be happy: security, sex, and shoes, but not necessarily in that order. That was the oil field advice I got. I'm like, okay, it's a bit more complex than that. And I remember sitting in the car, and it's blazingly hot. It's like a 50-degree day, and I know that I could hear Lola screaming from the car park, from the driveway, sorry. And the radio's on and the air conditioning's on, and I hadn't eaten breakfast or lunch, and I was strung out and hating it, and I just wanted to run.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go to the airport and find a rig and run.
And go home.
Walk through the front door. I didn't say what's for dinner, I just looked at Claire, and she's got that baby in her lap, and she's just sitting there in bra and knickers and sweating through the couch. It was hotter it's hotter in the house than it is outside. And she just looked at me, And I said, babe, give me the baby. Go and grab a cold shower. And she went, the fucking washing machine's broken. It's fucked. It's leaking and there's foam and shit and it's all gone down in the back of the house and it's wrecked all my stuff. Fix it. Fix it now. And I'm like, okay, babe. I run into the garage. I'm not a fucking washing machine mechanic, but I grabbed a spanner and a mini mag light.
Look busy.
I've got my slacks and my work and my tie, and the shirt like this one, And I go into the laundry and the washing machine's proper fucked. It's completely water's just pissing out all over the place. And it was this step down lounge thing and it's ruined all this. She'd unpacked to the point where everything was taken out of the boxes and out of the newspaper. All her things, her things, her clothes and stuff's all laid out completely just covered in water and dirty water. Oh, fuck. So I thought I'll just deal with it. So I got the washing machine, I pulled it away from the wall, leaned it back on its back 2 legs and popped a brick under the front, got down in the water, put the mag light in my mouth and slid under the machine, desperately panning around to see if there was something I could do to fix this fucking thing. And it was easy. The drain tube comes out of the drum and then the tube goes up into a bracket and then into the sink where it pumps out. It was blocked and it had come away from the bottom of the drum. There's a little circlip and then it just popped off. And I thought, oh, hell, I can actually fix that. So I'm shining the mag light around with my mouth and I've got the spanner and I'm pulling on the hose. It hadn't completely separated from the circlip. And I yanked on it and it came loose with a jolt. And said blockage turned out to be a foot-long turd of pubic hair and soap.
Beautiful.
That shot into my open waiting mouth. Which made me go, and I drove my head into a bracket next to the drum and slashed my head open above my left eyebrow down to bone. And there's claret squirting out all over the fucking place. It was like a Roman Polanski film. I was literally red. The GT stripes down the front of the white business shirt. Just red. It was really... You know how your head bleeds?
Yes.
Especially when your blood pressure's up on a hot day. There's claret just going everywhere. So I came out from under there. Didn't carry on. Went into the laundry toilet and took the bog roll off the little spindly thing and just started wrapping that around my forehead to soak up the blood. Went back under the machine, put the hose back on the fitting, put the circlip back on, tested it, and then started mopping up the water. The whole time Lola's screaming in the front room. She wouldn't settle. She wouldn't feed. She's just fucking screaming. And my head's thumping. And I go back into the lounge room, having fixed everything, to announce to my wife that it's all squared away. And she didn't say, hey, why are you wearing a pink turban? Or anything like that. She just said, is it fixed? And I went, yeah, babe. And she nodded. And I said, give me the baby. Go and have a shower. She went, okay. So she hands Lola over. And she's done that mum wrap. You know, the swaddly wrap thing? Yeah. It's like a special wrap where the hands are put to the side and the blanket sort of is folded over the hand and then it's crossed across the chest and likewise on the other side. So they're in this sort of mummy wrap thingy. And it's a pink little baby blanket, and she hands me my child, and in oil and gas terms, she's like a 3.5-inch pup joint. So she's about a 3.5-inch outside circumference. She's about 1.5 foot long. She's pink and cylindrical, and out the end is a bulbous, purple, veiny head. And in times of extreme duress, I make bad visual jokes. It's a coping mechanism. So I thought, that looks a bit like an erect cock. And I grabbed my baby. I ran into the study. I tucked her feet into my fly and drew a Jap-eye on the top of her head with a felt tip pen and ran back into the lounge room going, look at that! Look at the size of that! Woohoo! Get the camera! Get the fucking camera! And Claire, man, she disconnected at a level I never thought was... You know when women... like in a car accident, they'll pick a fucking car up to save a kid. That's what she did to me. I remember the coffee table just flipping through the air like it was made of tissue paper. And this fucking woman, 5'2", oh my God, she kicked the shit out of me. She pulled Lola out of my crotch. What's wrong with you? I was just this fetal, balled up thing on the floor, and she ran down the hallway with the baby. And I picked myself up and thought, wow, that's a dumb thing to do. And sat down on the couch and nervously channel surfing. She comes out of the bathroom 20 minutes later, and she's at that scary calm. Baby's asleep. She put the baby down. She's dressed nicely, ready to go. She walked down the hallway. She sat down next to me. And she looked at me, and her voice went down a couple of octaves. I was so scared. And she just said, honey, never make cock jokes using your daughter as a prop. And I was like, okay, babe. That was week 1 of new father, new job, new city, new life. Yeah, I learned a lot from my wife. And to answer your question, a few months later, I decided I need to write a fucking book because I can't do this shit. It's going to make me crazy.
Yeah.
And I announced to her, I'm going to ride my bike around Australia because my publisher said, do what you know. Yeah. Write what you love. Write what you cannot live without. Motorcycles. Since I watched The Great Escape at the age of 5.
Yes.
That's me, right? Bikes. So Claire looked at me and she said, really? There's probably 100 Muppets doing that right now. You need to make it different. And I said, how am I going to do that? And she said, you're the earth-raping eco-vandal poster boy for hydrocarbons and fucking up the planet. Why don't you set an example and do it on something that's environmentally friendly? You know, this is in 2011. So, I don't know, is there an electric bike? And at the time there wasn't. Or is there an alternate fuel bike you could use? No. And I did 6 months of research and there isn't, or there wasn't at the time. And moreover, my publisher loved the idea of it, but I needed to do it on something that was compliance plated.
Yeah.
I.e., allowed to be ridden on Australian roads and therefore insurable. And it did not exist. It didn't exist. So I had to set about making it exist. And that became an obsession and eventually got there. And very luckily met the professor of mechanical engineering at the University of Adelaide, a guy called Colin Castell. And he was incredibly good and was happy to do it with me. Then the money to make it work came from oil and gas. And right. that was one of the best experiences I've had with big oil, because of the first 2 books I'd got the face time at the right level with big entities. And I, signed some books for their board of directors, and then they were kind of a bit mystified on why I was there. And I launched into my pitch. Well, I want you to give me money so that I can ride a bike around Australia for charity that runs on straight used cooking oil. Looks I got were just kind of, what? But hang on, yeah, we're we'll happily throw school children into a mulcher if we think fucking hydrocarbons are going to come out. Why the fuck would we give you money so you can, what? Have you had an aneurysm? Paul, what? And I'm like, no, and I had to say them, but it's about the suspension of disbelief that you do give a shit.
Yeah.
Because, take Company X. They spend $2 million a year putting 2-page ads into big glossy magazines like National Geographic, showcasing their environmental fuel products. I'm asking for a fraction of that. And I'll say nice things about you guys, and it'll be a novel that'll be in print globally for at least a decade. That's a lot of free advertising, and there's nothing like a third-party endorsement from a fellow earth-raping eco-vandal like me. And they got it. That fast. Okay. So I gave the university the money, made the bike, got it registered, got it compliance plated, and rode around Australia on 600 litres of used cooking oil.
Was it a good laugh?
It was epic. And the maths was fascinating. Colin was just throwing numbers at me like, do you know, if we just took what KFC chuck into landfill in New South Wales a year, you could run all of Sydney's public transport on free fuel and produce 70% less carbon emissions. Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the government will never go for it. It's the fuel tax revenue, man. I mean, go for it and tax it in some other fashion. At least you're doing something good for the environment. All of the farming communities I rode through, because it smelled like fish and chips. A very strong smell of fish and chips. And it looked odd. It sounded odd.
Yeah.
And I'd pull up at, Dalby, rural Queensland, and a guy would walk up to me, and it was like we were doing a drug deal or something. He'd walk up to me and say, "Is that it? Hey, mate, does that thing run on?" I'm like, "Why are we whispering?" Yeah. "Oh, just running on cooking oil." "Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah, I've got a couple of ag bikes on my property. I run them on cooking oil. I get it from the roadhouse." And I'm like, "Mate, why are you fucking whispering?" "Oh, well, if I get caught, I get a $200,000 fine." That's what the government does.
Yeah.
The ag bike, not for road use, for the dude to use on his property, to ride around his property. Loads of guys are converting conventional bikes to run on used cooking oil, and they work and they run them. But if they get caught, man, they get fined.
Yeah.
So, I used to have faith in the system of government. I used to have faith in the hierarchy. It's all nefarious and corrupt and laughable. Unbelievably laughable. So the project worked, and the oil and gas companies were happy with the book, and with the book did well. The book did well, and with the what came back to them. And 2 years later, they said, "Can we do it again?" So I rang Colin, and I said, "What if I can get more, money from these? Because the kids, the kids at the mechanical engineering students were given carte blanche."
Yeah, they were.
And a massive, but yeah, I mean, how awesome, and they were great, awesome experience. And so he said straight away, "Well, we've done longevity. Let's do speed. Let's see how fast we can make a bike go on used cooking." "Okay." And so that was it. Then we were going to go and get the land speed record on used cooking oil, and that was a 3-year build. And awesome, awesome experience.
What were you doing to put bread on the table during that time?
Working in oil and gas behind a desk.
Still.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what happened with the land speed?
We built the bike over the 3-year window. We took it to a dry salt lake, Lake Girdner, where they have an event once a year called Speed Week, which is just like the Bonneville, the salt flats in Bonneville in America. It's the same timing system. It's actually the salt here is when it's perfect conditions. Sometimes Lake Girdner turns back into a lake, but when it's not a lake, it's actually flatter and better than Bonneville is for setting speed records. Right. It's a crazy place. It's just crazy. So on the you have to pack very carefully, because it's a long drive out there in the desert, and there is no infrastructure to rely on. So you need to bring every piece of kit that you could possibly think of. And that year there were 400 nutters on the salt, guys on bikes and driving cars that they built in the shed back home.
Yeah.
And they're doing 400 kilometers an hour on a thing that they built in the back shed that's running on nitrous oxide and proper nutters,
Yeah.
But fun. It was like a Mad Max film. It was just so much fun. So we took the bike. We'd done all the speed testing on a Nissan test track in South Australia that we got access to. And we tested the high-speed capability on an airport runway in Albury-Wodonga, and knew the bike could do 300 kilometers an hour over.
Yeah.
So it had power. It was 3.5 meters long, 1 meter wide. It weighed half a ton, and it was a streamliner.
Yeah.
It was like a rocket. You lay on it.
Right.
Yeah, awesome. It was just awesome. So we towed it out there onto the salt, and I fell off and broke my back in 2 places. But I got the Aussie record. I didn't get up to the world record because I had to get off. But we got an Australian record, and I went to the hospital. And it was good. Pilates. There's me and a whole bunch of pregnant ladies. Pilates. Get your back working again. And that book came out. The best part about that whole experience was in the last 6 months leading up to Speed Week, I porked up a bit.
Right. And
Colin's on the phone, and he said, "Now he's going through the checklist. You got there. It's a big checklist.
Yeah.
You got that. You got that. Yeah. You got that. Yeah. How much do you weigh? So I haven't weighed myself for a while. I go, how much do you weigh, Paul? I told him, and he went, oh. And he does the maths in his head. You can hear the wheels turning over the phone. He's like, you're going to lose 22.7 kilometers an hour. And you need to drop some weight, man. I'm like, but I saw the heels off your boots. Do a big poop. Don't eat breakfast. All that stuff. Get your sweat on. Go for a run. I'm like, oh, for Christ's sake. So I had that phone call with him, and the next day, I'm riding down Albany Highway. Yeah. Was it Albany Highway? Anyway, there's a shop called the Helmet House, and I'm poodling along on my bike, and I look over to my left, and there's this lid in the window, this carbon fiber helmet. So I grabbed the brakes, jumped in. Show me that helmet. And it was. There's no weight to this lid at all. It was like putting on a baseball cap. It was like sticking your head into a Bentley's glove box. It was just this $1,500 carbon fiber. You know, if Darth Vader rode a motorbike, he'd be wearing that helmet. Yeah. So I immediately bought it and got bollocked because you need a $1,500 helmet. Aren't they enough? You know. Yeah. And that was my weight saving there. So I called Colin and said, this is my weight now because I bought this helmet. And he went, oh, well done. Okay. So a couple of days later, I'm packing for the salt, and I'm in this room. I'm at this garage, and I've got these 2 giant grip bags, and I'm carefully putting everything into the bag and ticking off the checklist. And Sydney, my son, is in there with me. This is why I've got this floor in here, because it's SID-proof. Yeah. He can face plant and bash tools on the ground and not just it's rubber. So the whole floor's rubber. And so it's the boy's in there, Sid's in there with me, you know, being Sid. And he's at that point where he was transitioning from pull-ups to potty. And I just watched that kid neck his own body weight in mum's spaghetti sauce. And then I took a $1,500 carbon fiber motorcycle helmet, put it down in front of a nest of leathers, inverted in front of him, and then I turned my back. What an idiot. I'm looking for disposable batteries or something, and I just heard this. And it all came together in my brain. I thought, oh no. And I turned around, and he's just stepped out of his pull-ups, and he's sitting on this helmet, taking the dump of his life.
Your helmet.
Hello, Daddy. In my helmet. And I yelled. I was like, no! And Claire opened the door and went, and she picked the boy up, laughing, and there's King Kong's finger curled up in this helmet. Oh my God, couldn't believe that came out of that baby. Great. And I was like, fantastic. So I tipped it in the loo and spent the rest of the evening ripping the liner out of this helmet and scrubbing it in the laundry sink. Put it on the next day because Irwin wanted to see the magic $1,500 helmet. So I thought, it'll be a good test. I'll ride over to his place wearing it and see if I can cope with the smell. Well, I fucking couldn't, could I? I got about halfway there, pulled into a gas station and bought 4 of those magic trees and shoved them up between the liner and the helmet. And it just smelled like a jobby in a pine forest, right? So I got to his place, parked the bike, took the lid off and put it on the ground in front of me, inverted again by the front wheel. And he's walking down the 3 steps to his front door with a cup of coffee, and I'm walking towards him to hug him. And he said, is that the lid? And I went, yeah. And he went, pity. I said, why is that? He said, the dog's pissing in it. And I turned around and he's got this German Shepherd that's just going, oh. I think it was an olfactory trigger with the dog, but he filled it up with German Shepherd piss. That was it. It went in the bin.
Yeah. Things have been shattered and pissed in.
Yeah. Yep. But I turned up at the salt with the other helmet and fell off anyway, so, you know.
So what's Paul doing now?
Painting.
Yeah. How did that come about?
I had a plan for book 5.
Yep.
And it was a cunning plan.
So cunning.
You could put a tail on it and call it a weasel, yeah. Okay, I'll think of another. It was so cunning. You could nail it to a hippie and throw it over a rainbow.
Oh, right.
And it involved a motorcycle travel adventure again. Because you write what you love and you write what you know.
100%.
And my publisher said, oh, for fuck's sake, another book about bikes. It's been done to a death. Okay, you were lucky with the first one. The second bike book did okay. But leave it alone, Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman have done it. Everybody's done it. Everybody has done it. Stop doing motorcycle books. And I said, aha, but I've got something original that no one's done. And they said, go on. And I told them, and they went, fuck yeah, do it. And that involved, when I worked in Japan, I was asked to deliver a keynote to a Japanese oil and gas multinational, which I did. And then, I don't know if you've ever done business with the Japanese or been over. So it's very structured and very systematic. And you go through the formalities and you go through the structured components of doing business with them. And if it goes well, if you kick a goal, then you have the party. And the party is full of the sort of medieval farmyard malviolence that you would expect to be on the same level as all the structured, serious stuff. They're equal and opposite at the same time. So we did all the structured stuff, and then the kick-off mentalness at the end was really, really good fun. And I find myself in a karaoke bar in Tokyo with a seat cushion shoved up my shirt, doing the bloated near-death version of Elvis's My Way.
Yeah.
And it was just good fun. It was just, the whole, that's with the belching and everything, and all that stuff. And it was funny, fun. And I met the big boss, and he was laughing. He thought that was really funny. He was clapping like a Japanese schoolgirl in a Hello Kitty store at my near-death Elvis impersonation. He's going, I sat down next to him. We start talking. And that's where the idea was hatched, because he has an exotic pet, which is considered, in Japan, especially in Tokyo, if you have an exotic pet, it's a status symbol.
Yes.
This gentleman's got a 13-year-old adult male chimp called Jocko, who used to work in a circus, and he can ride a Pee-wee 50 and do monos. So I'm talking to this guy, and he's got a chimp at home that's got his own entire compound, and he rides around the backyard on a Pee-wee 50 doing wheelies and shows me video of this on his phone. And I'm like, I can I meet him? And he went, yeah, come round to the house tomorrow. You and Jocko can hang out. Now, when's that going to happen in your life?
Not very.
If you do or don't know, I have a bad history with primates.
Right.
Because I had a monkey for 3 years, and Joe, a spider monkey,
right,
and he died. He had a bad death, and that really bugged me, because you get attached to your pets, right?
Yeah.
Imagine having a pet that's got opposing thumbs. Everywhere you go, he goes, because the monkey chooses the man, not the other way around. And I was chosen by this spider monkey, and that was it. Everywhere I went for 3 years, I had this fucking monkey around my neck. So the opportunity to meet a larger primate like Jocko was wow, I'd seen orangutans in Brunei. There were some fires that came through the rainforest in the 3-year window that I was there, and everybody got evacuated out of Kuala Belait. There was really bad. We got these crazy sunsets on the east coast of Australia from all of the ash that went into the upper atmosphere. That was Brunei burning. So sad.
Yes.
And the primates that passed through, orangs are solitary creatures. And I remember going to the centre where they put them all, and it was just, I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
24 orangutans in a compound, just hanging out with burnt feet. And it was just magical, right? Just to go and, go and say hi and here's some bananas,
Yeah.
It was really funny watching them react to a mirror, because these are wild creatures. And the lady that was running the place walked into the compound and said, watch this. And she had a mirror with a blanket over it, and she took the blanket away, and they formed a queue based on age to have a look at all the bits of their body that they couldn't contort themselves in to look at without a mirror. So everybody went to the butt straight away and had a good look at their butthole. And let's think about it, right? If you've gotten to middle age
Yeah.
You're going to be
haven't
curious
seen it.
about what your butthole looks like. So they all just sort of looked at their armpits and tongues, and it was, like you do. So I've gone way off topic. Jocko. So I get to this gentleman's place, and it's palatial and huge. Jocko's punching a dart out the back, and we got along very well.
Yeah.
And I just came out and said it. And I said, can I please take him on a bike adventure around Japan? And he went, yeah, sure, Paul. So then I wrote to the Japanese Roads and Traffic Authority. And believe me, it's the only country in the world where you can do something that idiotic and they'll let you do it. So I was going to ride a Russian Ural, which is a motorcycle with a sidecar. The sidecar wheel is also driven. I was going to ride that bike around all 3 Japanese islands with a 13-year-old adult male chimp in the sidecar, and we would have adventures. And SBS were lined up to film it for a series.
Yeah.
And it was all set to go, and I got the bike, and I had the bike retrofitted with a special seat and 4-point harness and helmet for Jocko, and we'd been practicing, and he was totally, 5Ks down the road, he was already in that sidecar, just asleep, just dick watching, just fast asleep with like a sliver of drool connecting his bottom lip to his crotch. Just fast asleep I'm bombing around, loving it, right? And then he'd wake up, have a drink of water, wave at people. How much fun, right? How much fun would that be? And then he fucking died.
Oh.
So I was brokenhearted again. And mono chucking, bike riding, pack a day, beer drinking, chimps don't grow on trees.
They don't.
So I was stumped on what am I going to do? I've got nothing to talk about. I have to have an adventure and meet the people and then write about it.
Yes.
I don't do fiction.
Yes.
My publisher said, just write an adventure novel. Nah. No, I need to have the visceral. I need to have the contact and look at the people and have So I decided I need a creative outlet, or I will go crazy. Suburban bliss is a cage with massive golden bars. There's no more running off. Book 2 was well, let's go and do that thing in Afghanistan. And that upset Claire because I went off to Afghanistan for a month about a week after Anaconda finished and came back. But I'm glad I did it. So those I can't scratch those itches anymore. So
you still have the itches?
All the time. I've got 100 things I want to go off and do. But I just can't, fuck off and go and do it. It's the inner journey. The raising of the children and the that stuff. So I've got it's internalized to a point now that
Is that where the art comes from?
Yes, I need to express. And a mate of mine, an ex Air Force pilot, Chris Bakusis, an awesome guy. I met him in Afghanistan because it's a long story. There was a think tank I was involved with where government was discussing oil infrastructure, wars for oil.
Yeah.
And I wanted to write about that because I had access. What I didn't want to do was go to a part of the world like that with no trigger time or skill sets from a military perspective. But I know people that do because we would engage PMCs to look after us all the time.
Yeah.
So I went to Christian Durant, who had a PMC, and Chris was involved in that business, and some other SAS men from Perth. And so I met all those guys, and they had a contract with the UN in Kabul at the time, and I asked them very politely if I could go in country not as a writer, because you're immediately capitulated. No one's going to talk to you. I wanted to embed myself as one of those and just move around and observe. And they said, okay. So it was about a week after our wedding that my opportunity came up for me to go in. Mm-hmm. Not when it was a war, but just at the end. And so I rocked up there and saw some really wild stuff. And that's how I met Chris Bacousis. And years later now, Chris bought into a hotel in Perth that had just been built called, it's on Wellington Street in the city, called the Peppers Hotel.
Right.
It's opposite the Shell building. And he was here for the fit out, and he asked me to do a painting. I used to paint just as a bit of a release and a hobby when I was on the rigs, back when I knew Chris, but just little things in my garage, just amusements, you know.
Yeah.
And he always liked them. And he said, do a painting for our lobby. It just came out of the blue. He just asked me.
Yeah.
Because he was round the house for dinner. Do you still paint, Paul? I mean, this was 15 years ago. No. Just used to muck about, you know. He's, go on, do a painting for the lobby. It's like, no. And he was like a fucking
dog with a bone.
Yeah, like a dog with like a retired greyhound with a stuffed rabbit. He wouldn't fucking let it go. He'd ring me up, do the painting. You know, text me, do the painting. Just relentlessly. And it was December, the middle of December 2016. He was back in Perth, and he rang me up. Do the painting. I was, oh, for fuck's okay, I'll do it.
Fucking do it.
Begrudgingly went down, bought a canvas, acrylics, and I rang him back and said, I get to paint whatever I fucking want. You can put it in your hotel lobby.
Yeah.
It's a Paul Carter original. And he said, just make it tasteful. And I said, I'm not doing some still life composition or a landscape. Yeah. I'm going to do a motorcycle, Chris. And he said, yeah, fine, whatever. So I painted that.
Right.
That's a print, the originals.
Yeah.
In the hotel. And so he did. He put that painting in the hotel lobby, and then 2 weeks later I get a phone call from another hotelier. You the guy that did the painting in the Peppers? Yeah. Oh, we want one for the bar in our hotel. Okay. What do you charge? So I pulled this
figure out your
wild ass number out of my bottom, and he went, yeah, okay. So I did a big, massive picture of Steve McQueen in a Porsche. And yeah, and then, oh, you do commissions. And then a guy called me and said, well, I'd like one of my wife. So I painted this guy's wife. And then, I really loved it.
Yeah.
And then I kept going. Nights, weekends. 2 years later, I had an exhibition in Sit because I'd accumulated enough to have an exhibition. And it was synchronicity again. Luck. Sue Hines, the trade publishing director at Allen & Unwin, the lady that took a punt on me all those years ago, rang me up and said, Paul, I'm retiring. I'm 65. I'm going to knock it on the head. Lovely woman. And I said, oh, Sue, can I gift you a painting as a thank you? And she went, oh, absolutely. I'd love a painting. I said, I'll send you a list. You choose whatever one you want. It's yours.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of weeks go by. She writes back. She goes, I like this one. Great. So I pack it off and I send it to Allen & Unwin. And she opened it up at work on her last day. And all of her colleagues loved it too. So she put it in their boardroom and said, I'll leave it here. And hung it in the boardroom. And Sue retired. And her, the gentleman hired to replace Sue, post-acquisition by Murdoch Media.
Yeah.
Was a man called Tom Gilliard. He came in and loved the painting and took a picture of it on his phone. A couple of weeks after that, it was the Sydney Writers' Festival. And, of course, Tom's attending. He would have been to a lot of these functions. And, after the hors d'oeuvres are done and the mains are done, he went for a bit of a walk around the block, and it was in a hotel in the middle of Sydney, financial district. And next door to the hotel is a gallery called Wentworth Galleries, a high-end gallery opposite the Sydney Stock Exchange, and they were having a red carpet event. And Tom's like Roger Moore in a dinner suit, right? So he blags his way into this thing, and he's smashing a Cristal and eating a canapé and looking at some classic painting. And the owner of the gallery pings him as not being on the list and doesn't recognize him. He's like, but I'm Tom. I'm Tom. And they fall into conversation, which turns to authors who paint. And Tom said, I only think I think there's only two at Allen and Unwin. And she said, well, who are they? He said, Arngo and a guy called Paul Carter. And she went, oh, the oil rig guy. And he's like, really? And she went, well, I don't know his books, but my husband does. And I don't get any sleep because there's a lot of laughing in bed at night if he's reading one of Paul's books. He paints, and Tom pulls his phone out, and then I get a phone call from her. Would you like to exhibit with Wentworths? What? So I shipped all the art over there and did okay. Came back home, painted some more. Had one at Linton and Kay in West Perth in March of this year.
Yep.
Sold out on opening night. Every piece went on opening night. So I continued painting, and now there's exhibition 3 is back over in Sydney next week, Thursday the 21st, at Audrey Fine Art in Pyrmont. 15 pieces. Apparently my junk falls into a category called neo-noir pop surrealism. I don't know what that means, but I can show you some if you like. So that's painting. Right, I love the and I'm doing lots of complex collages. I did a snake that's about 5 by 4 feet, the canvas dimensions, and the snake is coiled in space. And all of the scales are Fender guitar picks. There's 587 Fender guitar picks, individually cut, painted, and stuck on the canvas as scales. And it worked. I think it worked really well. Yeah. I wanted to use thrown away picks, but I don't know enough musicians to make that happen. And I did a collage of book matches, 2,756 1970s strip club book matches.
Excellent.
Yeah, and that was hard to do.
Yeah.
I didn't get them myself. I got them from some person that collected them. Yeah. So I'm doing a lot of collage stuff.
Yeah. There's quite a variety of stuff you've been up to in your time.
Yeah.
Do you ever stop and think about it all?
Only that my most important, my biggest asset is time.
How do you mean?
Time. Don't waste it. Don't time is it's not about anything other than time. Not money or stuff or it's all stuff. It's just stuff. It doesn't matter. If it's something nice, it goes to someone else when you pop off and they have it for a bit and then they give it. It doesn't matter. It's just making sure that that I give the kids a good start. And I have some kind of rollout for Claire and I that's not burdening them in any way, and everything else is just faff, white noise, go away.
Yeah.
It's that simple. So it's about time, using your time, not wasting a day. Yeah. So I cram as much in as I possibly can. That doesn't involve going away and having an adventure. That's all hedonistic and about my own pursuits. I realize that now. I mean, I'm only just starting to learn that at 50. So I understand what I mean. Look, they say that you're remembered for 3 generations at best. So legacy isn't something that's doesn't matter. Just make sure that whatever world that Sydney and Lola inherit is at least as safe and as good as I can make it before I go. I think if they grow and have kids, if we don't bigger picture stuff, it's going to get really ugly. The mass extinction event, horrible wars for water and oil, it's all going in this spiraling horrible direction. Oh God. Yeah, that bugs me. But yeah, it's just time. So I'll cram more in if I can. But often I don't sleep. I 4 to 5 hours a night. I'm in here usually till 1, 2 in the morning painting, listening to music, and then get up and do my job, and just keep going, right?
What's it like living with Paul?
That's a pity Claire's not here. She would answer that question through the medium of expressive mime.
Which is not good for an audio-only podcast.
Exactly. So you have to imagine that she'd give you a paper cut and pour lemon juice on it, and hit you with a blunt object, and actually, no, it's not. I'm not complex, mate. Humor's the most important thing in this family.
Yes.
And she'll crack me up. I'll cry. She'll be telling me a story and I'm crying. She's got an epic sense of humor. You know, I think that's really important. People take themselves so seriously. Oh my God, so seriously. And it's those base things that figure most largely in her value system. So she's uncluttered with all of that stuff.
Yeah.
She's very direct, and you I'll know what she's thinking. She doesn't tiptoe. She's epically funny, very direct, and I love that. Mm. Yeah. So there's no grey area around anything.
I get the impression you kind of need that.
Yeah, she's just great fun. She's not a demanding person by any stretch. She's incredibly giving, massively patient. Yeah.
Mm. What do the next couple of years look like? Plans, projects?
Well, Lola's about to start high school, and I'm sure that's going to get interesting and complex. Sydney's still got a couple of years to go of primary school, and they're getting into sport. They're at that stage where, there's tennis and there's yoga and there's Pilates and there's art classes. That Lola's like me; she's really into using her hands and creating things. Sydney's a bit more academic. He's much more of a thinker. Lola's just a spontaneous, jump off the cliff now, fuck the consequences, right? He's not. So I'm getting a lot of fun out of the kids at the minute. Sydney particularly, because he's starting to ask those questions that boys tend to imprint on the male at around his age, sort of 6, somewhere between 6 and 8. They sort of poof the questions. Why do women have secrets? Why is the sky blue, Dad? What happens if I do this?
Working it out.
Yeah, to working it out. So I'm loving that stuff. Let's make something, and let's do that thing, and he's into it.
Yeah.
But I love the way he processes. He compartmentalizes things in a really lovely way, whereas Lola will just go, if I want to do something creative with her, it's like Walt Disney exploded in my garage. She'll just let her off the chain. She'll go nuts. So we do a lot of that, So they fill your time. My goodness.
Yes.
And the homework.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of that stuff going on. Claire gives a lot of time up for various causes. She's leaving next week to go to Cambodia to build a straw thatch hut in the jungle that pumps water from one straw thatch hut to another one. Like that. So she's going to go off and do that. So I'll be running around juggling full-time job, school drop-off. And I'll paint late into the night because I can't sleep when she's not here. I just can't. So I'll be a bit cooked when she gets back. Yeah. So it's just all very much you tend to focus on the family. So there are fellas I'd love to hang out with. Irwin's retired and lives in Perth. I don't see him anywhere near as much as I'd like to. I've got a really small group of mates that I don't get to see as much as I'd like to, because we don't really go out a great deal. We'll have date nights and we'll go out and we'll do things together, but sort of hanging out with the boys or going for a ride, or I haven't done much of that at all in the last few years. There's no time. So it'll probably just be more of the same, I'd imagine. I'd love to have another adventure and go off and do something, but I don't think anything's going to happen. There was a really wonderful project that came at me and it fell over, and I got excited. Got really excited. There was a National Geographic had a series on television, gosh, that was 4 years ago, called Life on the Edge.
Yes.
And they asked me would I like to be one of the presenters. And I said, yeah, of course I would. Well, we'd like to ask you to come and audition. So I went, and I had to tell them that my literacy skills are so appalling, I'm going to struggle to read an auto cue because it'll come out the wrong way. I'll be stood there in front of the camera going, oh, the potato was on the suitcase. It'll just come out wrong. And this is a program, 7 1-hour eps on the history of Australia. Yeah. So there's Aboriginal words, names of places, people, regions, and Dutch and Portuguese ship names, captains. Oh my God, they hired me, but I had to take the script. It was heavily scripted, and I had to memorize that script.
Right.
Absolutely verbatim. Otherwise I would bollocks it up. It would be take 15. Paul can't get his, he can't read the auto cue. So it was a lot of work, homework, learning the script.
Yeah.
But that worked well for the crew because I turned up and they'd have there'd be 10 scripts on set, I said, oh no, I don't need to look at that. And they thought, wow, how arrogant is this wanker? He memorized the script. And I would say, yes, I had to. I'm dyslexic. I can't read the auto cue. Oh, okay. So I learned very quickly that the working in a small team, in a remote place, I've been doing that shit all my life. So the crew, I got a massive kick out of the crew because they didn't have to help me with the script. Yeah. Because I'd memorized it, and I would help them. Traditionally the talent get put in a deck chair and there's a runner. Would you like? What do you need? Yeah. What do you need?
You're involved.
You would just sit down there and say, I want a Monte Cristo number 5 and a flat white, my good man. And run off and whatever. But I never did that. I straight in with the lighting, camera gear, dolly stuff, all the little train tracky things, and the Steadicam rig, and help. Yeah. And as a result, we would finish 2 hours earlier, and then we would commence with drinking and storytelling, and they were great fun.
Yes,
they're all experienced Nat Geo. You can imagine what these people are like. They were all up Everest 2 years earlier, and they're fit, fit. One of the camera guys, particularly this German guy. My God, he had muscles in his shit. He was so fit. He was like, yeah, Paul, yeah, we go hard. Okay, Yuli, yeah, no problem, man. And we, can you climb up that tree? And yeah, well, I'll do it. And the director, they had 2 directors. One guy was just lovely from Fremantle. A guy called Elliot Buchan. I would have done anything for Elliot. We could have done a 16-hour day, all over the desert. I don't know, down a mine. Somewhere they had a submarine, there was a good budget. Yeah. And he could say to me at the end of all of that, hey, Paul, can I get you to just go ahead and roll around in the fire? Could you do? I'd be like, yeah, sure, Elliot, shirt on, off, what, front, face first? I would have done it. Yeah. Would have done it for him. The other guy, I hated him. Yeah. Everything about him made my skin crawl, right? And we ended up becoming mates. Yeah. But that's only after he was doing a chopper shot and the chopper went in. Up in Darwin, they were doing this low-level pass, going past a wreck, and it's a classic pilot error. The guy just banked hard and went and put the chopper in the water. Proper ditching, scary, and everybody got out. And this guy, after that, his whole attitude changed. Yeah. And I was like, you've been in a ditching and you didn't die. Come here, I love this guy, But it was funny at the end of...
What happened to that project?
They shot the whole thing. 13 months of filming. It was on telly, Channel 7 played it like 4 or 5 times. It went on the Nat Geo channel, ran for a couple of years. But yeah, went out on DVD. I don't know, I don't think it's still being screened, but it was enormous fun.
Yeah.
National Geographic, everything that you would imagine that it would be like to work on a big project like that. Yeah, enormous fun. Because their crews are so fine-tuned at what they do for a living.
Much like your earlier days.
Yeah, and if you realize you have a high expectation and match it from what they want from you as talent, and if you just muck in, do the job, and all the rest of it, then you and the crew have this really awesome time working together, as opposed to, we need to set up the next shot. It's going to take 40 minutes, plus we have to wait for the light and all the rest of it. I'm not going to go mince off and demand a flat white. I'm going to help them set it up. So I learned a lot about cameras and gear and all of the lens choices and lighting choices that are so paramount to capturing whatever it is that you're trying to capture. Much to my detriment, we had one episode that very close to being killed. Very close to being killed.
Right.
Yeah, that was scary. And it happened really quickly too. And I'll never forget that. That was properly... Oh. Yeah. When the weather girl does the weather now, I can't look at that map of the west coast of Australia without seeing Dirk Hartog Island and feeling a little bit sick.
Right.
It's this banana-shaped island off the coast of the middle of WA, near Denham.
Yes.
You been there?
No, but I know where it is.
You know where it is, right? Okay, so Dirk Hartog in 1616, with the commerce of the day, everybody would come around the Cape, heading roughly towards Australia, and turn left. Lots of guys turned left too late, and they're all the wrecks that are up and down the coast. Old Dirk pulled up short enough and thought, oh, that's the big weird one that we don't know anything about. Let's row ashore and have a look. So they rowed ashore, and he went, wow, this is really inhospitable. We can't grow anything here. Let's fuck off. But before he left, he climbed the 200-foot limestone cliffs at the northern end and battered a mast into a crevice at the top of the rocks. And to that he nailed a pewter plate and wrote the 1616 equivalent of Dirk was here.
Yep.
That's now sitting in the National Maritime Museum and represents our earliest European artifact. So naturally, Nat Geo said, well, we have to do a piece on that northern tip of Dirk Hartog about the plate, and all the history.
Yeah.
And they have a whole research folder of stuff that you need to learn, and it's scripted.
Yep.
So the process was going to be a light aircraft and then a chopper, and then put the helo down, everybody debusses, we do the scene, we're back in time for tea and medals. And then their Nat Geo-ness kicked in and they went, nah, let's drive. Let's rent 4-wheel drives and let's drive.
Yeah.
Because we can organise a little ferry to take us over to Dirk Hartog, and then we can drive and have that experience of driving all the way up that big banana-shaped island to get to the top, and then drive back. And I said, yeah, fuck yeah, let's do that. I was all caught up in it, So we did that. We got 4 big 4-wheel drive vehicles. One by one, we're taken across to the island, and then we commenced driving, and it's full-on driving. We cooked 3 vehicles getting halfway up there. You name it. We blew up 3 cars getting there, carrying hundreds of thousands of dollars of gear that they're just dumping.
Yeah.
Dump it. We ended up with 5 people in a troopy pulling a tinny that's full of camera gear, supplies, water, etc. And we get about halfway up the island, and then I stopped it all and said, hang on a minute, guys. We're running out of options. If something goes wrong with this vehicle now, what's your plan? What's the plan? I want to know what the plan is. And there wasn't one. And so I said to them, I don't I don't take a dump without a plan. Because that's the way it has to be. There has to be a plan and a backup plan to that plan so you can default to something. A double redundancy means you won't get hurt. Oh. So we had a little chat, and it was Elliot, the awesome director, and he goes, how about this? We can see the coast. We're in an elevated position. We could see the coast. There's a little bay down there. It's like 2 Ks from where we were. Let's just drive straight there. We'll launch the tinny there, and we'll just motor up the last 80 odd Ks or whatever it was. I can't remember. Just hugging the coast. It's mill pond calm. Yep. We'll put the camera gear in, the sound gear. We'll take me. We'll take Yuli, the German cameraman. We'll take Owen, the sound recordist, who's this big hulking bear of a man, and you, all in the tinny, and we'll just poodle on up, pull in, do a little piece to camera. We'll climb the 200-foot limestone cliffs to get to the top. We'll do the piece to camera where the crevice is and the plate was. Then we'll climb down, have a little picnic, wait for the sunset. We'll do a nice closing piece to camera with the Spielberg sunset hitting the limestone cliffs behind you. We'll motor back, camp here, back the next day. Are you comfortable with that? And I said, that sounds awesome, Elliot. Let's do it. So we launched the tinny. And I'm standing in this thing with a stills camera taking pictures of the man-eating sharks that we saw dozens of while we poodled up. Because it's called Shark Bay for a reason, right?
For sure.
Yeah, so we pull in, had a picnic, climb the rocks, do the thing, climb back down again, have a little picnic. Elliot says, sun's setting, let's do that piece to camera, the closing shot. Yeah, cool. Jump in the tinny. We motor around to the northern tip, and it's breathtaking. It's this unbelievable sunset, hitting those cliffs. I'm dribbling, just dribbling. Blah 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 blah. It was like the ending of Grand Designs, when Kevin just talks shit about the house, and he's just going. Rah! And I started banging on about all this, all of it, and I'm getting really into it. And Owen's loving it, and Elliot's like, "Let's do another one. Just change that last bit. Let's do another one. Let's do another one. Let's do another one." Bang! A squall came through. A violent squall came through from nowhere, and if anybody on that boat should understand and know how fast the sea will kill you, it's me. And it hit us so hard and so fast, and I was distracted, and we'd been sucked out on the current about 2 Ks from those cliffs. And in that current, the water turned black like ink. Big waves were hitting us, and I know if I hit the water, I can't swim that far against that current.
Yeah.
And all I'm thinking about is all the sharks. And that's when I started looking and realized there were no flotation devices of any kind in that tinny. There were no EPIRBs, no supplies, no nothing. Yeah. And I sat in that fucking thing, which is sinking now. There's 2 inches of aluminium poking out of the water. We're sinking, and we're 2 Ks from those cliffs. I was like a fat, succulent baby lamb, realizing, oh, this is how I go out. Fuck.
Yeah.
Angry. Fuck. Owen started crying. My wife's having a baby. And Yuli, the German cameraman, he just kept fucking filming. He just had the camera up against his head, and I'm sat there just yelling at everyone's an arsehole. Fuck all of y'all, This isn't how I'm supposed to go. Yeah. Oh, motherfucker. I was just angry. Yeah. I was just angry because I didn't check. And I let it happen. Because I was too,
Yeah. But you obviously got back.
Yeah, obviously I got back, but it was luck, man. We weren't going to swim that. It wasn't going to work. We were going to drown and get eaten by sharks. That's what was going to happen. And Elliot focused. Some guys focus. Some guys freak out. Elliot focused. It was awesome. He was just stood at the back, and he's looking at the cliffs, and I'm yelling all of my reasons why, at him. I can't fucking swim that far over the wind and the rain and the seas coming in. I can't swim that far in this current. Fuck you, Elliot. Like none of us can. Just angry, just nothing but angry. And he waded past me and pushed my head out of the way, slapped Owen hard across the face. He dropped his boom and his camera. It was all in the drink, right? Pulled Yuli away from the engine and flipped the cover off the end, but we got broadsided by a big wave and it killed the engine. And Owen was trying to start it and was running the battery near flat. And we're getting sucked out in the current. So Elliot took the cover off the outboard and threw it at me and said, "Start bailing out with this." And I was just like, oh! I'm bailing out like a man possessed. There's water flying out in the air. And he's got this backpacky, belly baggy thing. And he had a butane lighter and a little can of WD-40 and some other shit in there. And he starts working on this engine. Rips the camera out of Yuli's arms and takes the waterproof cover off it and wraps that round the engine and got it started. He got that engine started. Our lives depended on that engine starting. And it was misfiring, but he got it going. And we started motoring back towards those cliffs. I was bailing out about the same rate that the bow wave was taking on water. And we sank eventually about 30 meters from those vertical cliffs on the northern side. We all hit the drink and just swim for it, boys. And got to the cliffs, utterly exhausted. Everybody made it. And the sense of elation, the whole time I was waiting for a shark to eat me, or I'd get tired, cramp up and just fucking drown, right? It didn't happen. We climbed the cliffs. We got a fire going. And we made it. But it was horrible. I thought, that's it. This is me. That's how it happened. And they sent a helicopter, and the chopper took me all the way to Perth, and Claire was waiting with the kids. And I got off that chopper, just, clothes ripped, all bloodied and fucked up, and kissed the ground. And she's like, "Oh my God." They didn't tell her anything. What happened? And I said, "Just get me home, babe. Just get me home." So we jumped in the car, and the producer's waiting in my driveway. "Hi, Paul. Are you going to sue us?" I was like, No, not at all. It's just another funny story now, isn't it?
It is now.
And then, sorry, your question was what next? So another show concept came up where Discovery had pestered Porsche and Mercedes enough to get access to this vehicle that Porsche have got in Stuttgart, tucked away in a basement somewhere. Memory serves, it's called the T86. So during World War II, or rather just before World War II kicked off, the Germans were in the US. There was an Olympics. Famously, Adolf Hitler wouldn't shake the hand of the African-American runner.
Yeah.
Well, because he's a Nazi, right? So he wasn't going to shake the man's hand. And at the time, they were considered to be leading innovation and infrastructure. The technology coming out of Germany was, the airships were parked in New York, and everybody was all loved up about the German work ethic and all that stuff. And the Nazis were just another political party that had some funny ideas about some things. So while he was there, Hitler heard about the land speed record and decided that Germany was going to take it away from the Americans. And after that event, they all fucked off back to the Reichstag, and he sent some goose-stepping nut jobs round to Ferdinand Porsche's house and Heinrich Benz's house. And, they stuck a Luger in their ears and dragged them into the back of the car and drove them back to the Reichstag and marched them in front of Hitler. And he said, "Right, you two blokes are going to get on, and I'm going to give you 1 million Reichmarks, and you're going to build a motor car that'll break the land speed record, and you're going to do it in under a year, or I'll have you shot, I'll have your friends shot, and your friend's friends shot, and that nice guy you bought a latte from on the way to work this morning, have him shot too, right? So off you go." So they went off and designed betwixt them, through fear, the T86. And they got a Focke-Wulf pilot to drive this thing on the Volkswagen test, I don't know what it was called, the Reich circuit, where they would test things. And he smashed it. It went really fast. And then he invaded Poland, and it went, the rest is history, right?
Yeah.
About the Britain and
All
that. But the car still exists. Quietly tucked away under Porsche. And Discovery pestered them and pestered them and pestered them. It's still got swastikas all over it. And they said, You can take photographs of it, and you can scan it with your lasers and stuff, because the premise of the show was to build the T-86 from scratch using exactly the same tech and materials that they did back in 1930, can't remember.
Mm.
And I thought, how amazing, how unbelievably amazing. And I can speak German. And my mother's German. And, you know, it was odd because the British side of the family were fighting Germany, and the German side of the family were fighting. So when you can imagine Christmas at my place, no one got on.
No.
So I said, I like fast cars, and I can go fast and speak German, and I can do TV. And because they wanted a presenter that would present the show and then get in the fucking thing and race it on the salt. And I was like, I'm your guy. I am so your guy. Let me do it. And the deal fell through. The show fell through.
Mm.
But I got into the top 6 people they were looking at. It fell through. I would have loved to have done that. Yeah. So, no, there's nothing planned. There's nothing going
Last
on.
question I always ask my guests is, it's a bit of a hypothetical question, but it draws some interesting stuff out. If you could load a little nugget of knowledge into the collective consciousness, everybody just gets it, what would it be?
A nugget of consciousness.
If you could stick a nugget of knowledge to the collective consciousness.
The collective consciousness.
Yes, Paul's contribution. So everyone just gets it.
Oh, fuck. That's a really hard question.
It's not. The answer will come to you straight away.
I've got a really skewed view about the collective consciousness. One singular thing. Oh, God. Oh, God. I've got a problem with plastic.
Yeah.
No plastic?
There you go.
Okay.
I think you've contributed enough in this discussion.
Yeah, I'm just really...
It's fine.
Like, mate, we go into a grocery shop and we go to the store where you bring all your own containers.
Yeah.
And you weigh them and you go to these hoppers and, you know, there's a plastic ban. There's like no plastic.
Yeah.
So I'm really into the no plastic thing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today.
Thanks, mate.
It's been vivid.
It's vivid. It's been scratch and sniff vivid.
It has. It's, I think, like I said in the middle of it, it's been awesome to listen to someone who can actually tell stories, because it's a dying art.
Storytelling. Yeah, I love storytelling. Public speaking stuff is fun if you get the right crowd.
Yeah.
When you can tell stories that are possibly not appropriate.
Yes.
If you get a room of people that say just whatever you want to do, that's always good fun.
Yes, I can imagine.
If they let you drink while you're doing it, it's really good fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you.